Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae along with Ted Rollins. Thank you for following along with us. We're bringing you the murder retrial for Karen Read happening in Massachusetts, where she faces up to life in prison for the death of her boyfriend, who was a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe.
He, of course, was found outside the home of Brian Albert, a now retired Boston police sergeant. The trial taking place in Dedham, Massachusetts. This morning, John O'Keefe's 17-year-old niece testified. And this was done without cameras, so we didn't get to watch it. However, we have Matt Johnson with us, and he did get to see it. And Matt, good to see you. This was a huge witness, and we didn't get to see it. Please fill us in. Tell us about the mood in the courtroom and everything else.
Ted, Julia, nice to see you both. So the day started off with more clips of this defendant, Karen Read, describing her relationship, saying that she was in a good relationship and that John O'Keefe did not want to break up with her. Following that, half of the O'Keefe family stood up from their seats in the gallery and they walked out. The media that was only using pen and paper at the time, we were looking around at each other. And then we noticed that some minors started filing into those seats. It was friends of this witness, this niece of Officer John O'Keefe. He was raising her at the time of this incident, 17 years old now, and she was wearing a white sweater, and she was soft-spoken as she talked about the breakdown in the relationship. She talked about, in general, the coldness of the defendant, in her opinion. She was asked, how would it feel spending time with the defendant? She answered, it felt like coldness towards me. She was asked this, how often would you feel that? And she said, occasionally. Then they went into details about the possible motive here, the breakdown of the relationship and that Aruba trip, where Karen Read was allegedly accusing John O'Keefe of cheating. She was asked, following the trip, was there more tension between JJ, who is John O'Keefe, that's what she called him, and Karen Read? She said that there was a lot more tension and fighting. And then she went on to describe the fact that her uncle, who again she called JJ, asked Karen Read to leave his home after that trip, that New Year's trip, and Karen Read refused to.
Yeah, we're not hearing a lot in terms of the jury about Aruba, Matt, but that's getting into those details, it sounds like. What was her testimony about January 29th, 2022, the day that John O'Keefe was missing and then ultimately found at 34 Fairview?
Yeah, she even got more somber on the stand. She was really talking about the fact that just hours before she was celebrating getting into the private school of her choice. She went to bed at around midnight, and then she was woken up out of a deep sleep at around 4:30 in the morning on the 29th by this defendant, who was shaking her and yelling, get up, get up. John did not return home last night. And then, according to this testimony, she was instructing the 17-year-old to text various people and get them on the phone, including Jen McCabe. Here's part of the testimony. She said the defendant was also stating this, could I have done something? Could John have been hit by a plow? And then she moved on to the Jen McCabe part of the conversation. She said that, did you notice any specific statements to Jen McCabe or others? She answered, maybe I hit him. How many times did she say that? She answered, I think once. She also told the jury about how the defendant was acting after Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts arrived at her home. She said, she was asked, did the defendant ever comfort you? She replied, no. Did she ever come into your room? She replied again, no. What was Jen McCabe's demeanor? She replied, level-headed. How about the defendant's demeanor? And then she replied, still frantic. She was describing a very chaotic scene the morning of the 29th. During this testimony, the jury was taking a lot of notes, but they were also looking at this witness. A lot of the women were leaning forward in between note-taking and then looking over at the defense table. Karen Read, I could notice, she was leaning back. She was trying to make eye contact. There was no eye contact between the two, and she was just holding her head in her hand.
Boy. Thank you for bringing that to life for us. Matt, I mean, you have to feel so horrible for both the niece and the nephew.
Absolutely, especially everything they've been through, not even just the death of John O'Keefe, but they had already lost their parents. Karen Reed was like a pseudo-parent, it sounded like, before the breakup, and then she was immediately out of their lives.
All right, let's bring in studio with us domestic violence expert and former law enforcement officer Claudia King. This is one of those witnesses that I'm sure the cross-examination, in fact, I don't know if Matt said it would had any cross-examination, had to be short. You tiptoe around someone like this who has been through so much, but talk about through the eyes of someone who was young, but also had that unique front row seat because she was there to see the relationship sort of devolve right before John O'Keefe's death.
That's exactly what I was thinking when Matt talked about her testimony today, and she talked about things getting worse kind of after that Aruba trip. And I find it very interesting as well that she said she heard Karen say maybe a plow hit him, or could a plow have hit him, maybe I hit him. Where that has a problem for me is because Karen has said time and time again she saw him go into the house. So why would those be the first things that came to your mind, is that a plow or she hit him if she saw him go into the house? But I agree with you. I think this witness gave a really unique perspective and a great perspective for the jury to see Karen Reed and how she was towards John.
What do you think this is like for these kids, having to come in? This is the second trial that this niece has had to testify. And I mean, they've been through so much already, but the goal for the prosecution is to get a conviction, to get justice for John O'Keefe. But are you surprised that they decided again to call the niece to the stand? We don't know if the nephew is going to be called at this point.
It's got to be really difficult for both of them to just go through this. And like you said, they've had so much tragedy in their lives. And I think the prosecution really weighed this and decided that what the niece had to say was important enough to bring her in, even though they know it will be traumatic for her to testify yet again. But her insight was so important for the jury to hear.
And I agree. Yeah. She's 17, has done it before, and judging from Matt's description of it, she was a willing participant in this scenario because I think she, in her heart, wants to be part of it, one would hope.